Hi there, I'm Darren McDermott bringing you an update on Greece as the struggling Eurozone member has secured a further €6.8 billion of bailout funds. However, the Troika has said Greece's economic outlook remains uncertain and that the reform programme is moving too slowly. I have Gizem Kara, European economist at BNP Paribas on the line. So what are your thoughts on this news and how do you think this will affect the country's outlook?
So basically, the Troika's, I think, worries about Greece's economic outlook, and especially their, I think, progress on the reform side, structural reform side is true. They have been too slow in implementing, especially the structural reforms. But maybe we should see it in the context of the political background as well, because we initially had a three-party coalition government with the junior coalition members, Democratic Left, especially being a left-wing party, was disagreeing with some of the reforms that Mr. Samaras was trying to implement. So maybe with the departure of that party from the coalition government, maybe it could be more a kind of cohesion between PASOK and New Democracy to be able to move ahead with the structural reform side going forward. But that said, of course, this is yet to be seen. This obviously depends on the cohesion between the two parties, and let's see how they will evolve. But as Troika says, so far that has been slow progress. And I think going forward, obviously this will be quite important in Greece's progress under the program, because as you have seen in this review process, there's already quite big challenges for even the disbursement of the future funding to Greece. And I think this September review, the next review, will be equally most probably challenging, because under the program, when they published the documents in June, IMF already highlighted a 4.6 billion funding gap for 2014, which needs to be obviously tackled with, because IMF wants the program to be funded on a 12-month rolling basis. So now that Greece kind of secured funding for this review, the fourth review, now obviously the next review, September, they need to tackle with this funding gap that will appear in 2014. So overall, I think still Greece is not out of the woods yet. We will get back to these kind of problematic situations in the period ahead. Clearly, downside risk to growth, which would obviously suggest downside risk to fiscal targets, is also something that is already in the background. It has been always a problem for Greece. So overall, the country's outlook still, in my view, looks to be on the kind of not pessimistic side, but downside risks remain, let's put it that way.
And do you think we will see an improvement in market sentiment in the euro area as a result of this news?
In terms of improvement in market sentiment in the Eurozone, I mean, we have seen obviously quite big volatility in the Greek spreads recently because of this concerns on the further funding to Greece, whether they will get it or not. And as soon as we get the news, obviously Greek spreads narrowed massively, but it's also because it's a very illiquid market in Greece. Of course, that has some impact on the Eurozone as a total, but let's consider the fact that, of course, Eurozone spreads in general are driven by other factors. For example, the political uncertainty in Portugal last week was an issue, and then afterwards we got a quite dovish ECB, which helped. So I wouldn't say Greece is clearly the only thing that will drive the markets, but of course the fact that we get positive news from Greece obviously is helping for the sentiment overall.
And what else should we be keeping an eye out for in terms of Greece?
In terms of Greece, I think obviously macro data going forward will be something quite important to watch, because at the end, it's a country that is still continuing with fiscal austerity, which is having a big impact on domestic demand and people's, obviously, sentiment, consumer sentiment. So it will be quite important to see whether we get at least some encouraging turn for consumer sentiment, or, let's say, investment, in general growth outlook, GDP. So that will be things that we will be looking for. And with obviously the funding issue related to the program, the deficit basically still being financed by the program, it will be important to see how Greece evolves in terms of its fiscal deficit. And I think the other factor is obviously the politics, whether, this two-party coalition government now will be able to hold on together, they will be okay to implement structural reforms. I think these will be the things we will be watching for in the period ahead. And clearly the next review, as I said, is quite important because of this funding gap issue for 2014 that needs to be tackled with in September.
Thank you very much for that. Well, viewers, tomorrow we'll be conducting a Targets in Focus looking at Latin American currencies, as we have rate decisions from Brazil, Chile and Mexico this week. But for now, goodbye.